Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And once again, folks, we are going to that horrid world, also known as the JRC. Now, before we go ahead and get started, folks, as always, just a few disclaimers. First off, you will find the link to the document we have been going over for a week now in the description, as well as the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shock campaign. Get the templates done, folks. It's right there in the description. Fill out your name, click on your senator. Please take a look at some of the other ASAN templates that we have out there. Number 2, sign the Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center down petition. There's only one way to stop these slippery bastards, folks, and that is to close them down. Now, as always, folks, when we're talking about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of, as well as sometimes seeing video clips of video surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you have young children present, please use your headphones. And yes, folks, sometimes when I do these videos, I do stumble over my words. Stop just like that there. Get lost in a train of thought. You know how it goes. My apologies in advance. Alright, let me try to scoot a little closer. Kitty has taken my usual spot. What else is new, right? Maybe if only he could take my calls for me tomorrow. Since, my numbers have sucked so much. Anyways, not the point. We're going back to where we left off yesterday. Department of Developmental Services. Standards to promote dignity. The JRC promotes dignity. Do they? Wow. I will probably rant. That is the most ridiculous thing I have seen yet. But go off, Judge. Go off. Special sanctions of violations of rights of individuals. The school's existence is a violation of rights of individuals. Oh, right, that's right. You don't think we're individuals. You think we're animals. God, animals are not even subjected to the cruelty we are. Mistreatment of an individual by a person who works for or is subject to the direction of the JRC is grounds for suspension or revocation of the certification of and license of JRC by the department and is ground for disciplinary action, which may include dismissal. Is that a fact? Is that a fact? All they do is mistreat people. Judge, what do you think adversives are? Them handing out ice cream cones? Them being denied getting to game after supper? Seriously? Wow. Failure of an employee of JRC to report department any allegation or instance of mistreatment is ground for disciplinary action, which may include dismissal. You should have dismissed the whole staff a long time ago. Failure of head of JRC to report any allegation or instance of mistreatment to the department is grounds for action by the department, including revocation or suspension of the certification license of the provider. They should have been closed down a long time ago, Judge. Adversives do nothing but cause trauma on vulnerable fucking kids and young adults. Period. God. Informed consent. Is that what we're calling it now? The informed consent of whom? The students? I think not. Oh, but let's see this load of garbage. Okay, the informed consent of an individual or guardian. Oh, here we go. I thought so. Do you imagine, Judge, that any student there who is their own guardian would actually want to be there and get the shocks and be tortured and have food deprivation? Really? Hmm. Prior to the initiation level 2 or level 3 behavior modification interventions. Yes, because the well educated autistic is just going to sign right up. The consent of the individual or guardian must be in writing, and the consent expires upon the completion of the specific procedure for which it applies or 1 year after it's signed. Oh, yes, that's going to stop the torture. A written record must be made that the details procedure used to obtain the consent. Judge, you realize most of these parents are the ones giving the consent. You don't actually give a damn about getting the consent of the people that these acts are actually being committed against. And every time we bring up what's actually going on there, we're being told by you, by the media, by fucking everyone that we're exaggerating or lying. Okay? That's the facts. Hate to tell you. The person securing the consent must explain the intended outcome, the nature of and procedures involved in the purpose, treatment, or activity, the risks, including side effects, as well as risks of not proceeding, alternatives to the proposed treatment or activity, and must explain that consent may be withheld or withdrawn at any time. Is that a fact? Tell that to Cheryl McCollums. She told JRC to no longer put the electrodes on Andre's arms. They did not listen. They don't give a damn what the parents actually consent to and what they don't. I'm just putting it out there. And by the way, if you think they're actually truthful with these parents about what they actually do there, you're either naive or complicit. I have to wonder, which one is it? Oh, let's see more garbage fire here. Emergency restraint. An emergency exists when a reasonable person would perceive one or more of the following. Reasonable. Like you all know a damn thing about reason. The present occurrence of serious self-injurious behavior, the present occurrence of serious physical assault, the imminent threat of self-serious injurious behavior or behavior which is likely to lead to self-injury. You mean like tearing up a styrofoam cup or blinking profusely? That kind of what's going to lead to self-injury? Which the individual has to present the ability to effect such behavior and has engaged in any action which indicates a present intention or inclination to carry out such behavior immediately and or the imminent threat of serious physical assault. I'm going to tell you, any of those fuckers try to put electrodes on me, there's going to be physical assault. I can promise you that. Where an individual has present ability to effect such assault and has engaged in any act which indicates a present intention or inclination to carry out such assault immediately. Property damage is not an emergency unless such damage is also likely to lead to serious self-injury of the individual or those present. The use of emergency restraint is restricted to emergencies as defined above. Oh, but they don't, do they, Judge? They lie their asses off and you buy it every time. They're all there, they're professionals, right, Judge? Emergency restraint may be used only after the failure of less restrictive alternatives, after a determination based on professional judgment that such alternatives would be ineffective. Oh, so you get to determine if alternatives would be ineffective. Are you a doctor, Judge? It can only be used for the period of necessary to accomplish its purpose, but can never be used beyond 2 hours, unless the head of the JRC, his or her designee, authorized physician, or authorized staff person issues a renewal of the restraint after determining that it is necessary to prevent the continuation or renewal of an emergency condition. And you just take their word for it that they're not lying off their ass. JRC must train all direct contact staff in safe and appropriate use of physical or mechanical restraints. Ah, yes, I remember. 16 hours. JRC can use no form of mechanical restraint other than mitts, unless a waiver for a particular individual is obtained. Ah, you mean from people like you who just buy their bullshit, right? You'll just sign it without even looking at it or demanding evidence. Just, well, it's their clinician says. A clinician paid for by JRC, who works at JRC. God, it couldn't be more see through if it was a freaking pane of glass. Any mechanical restraint used by JRC pursuant to a waiver must be used in accordance with all other requirements under the 115 CMR 5. Any device used for mechanical restraint must provide appropriate and safe ventilation and always allow for appropriate attention to the physical and emotional comfort of the individual in restraint. God, seriously? Seriously, Judge? Oh, yes. There is comfortable restraint. The head of the JRC or an authorized physician can authorize the use of restraint if either of these two individuals is present for an emergency, justifying the use of restraint. Oh, so they're. As long as two people at the JRC agree. Ugh. Otherwise, a designated person who is authorized to act for the head of JRC in his or her absence may authorize restraint. Of course, as long as they authorize it. If the designated person is not present for emergency, a staff person authorized to give such orders by the head of JRC can issue a restraint order. The reasons of the order may be recorded in writing at the time of its issuance. If the head of JRC, an authorized physician, or designee authorizes the order, it cannot be for more than 2 hours, and it can be renewed for no more than 2 hours by the same if it is necessary to prevent the continuation or renewal of an emergency condition. Tell Jennifer Masumba that. Tell Ian Cook that. Tell a lot of victims who have come forward who was there after the 2007 and the 2002 incident that. God. If an authorized staff person authorizes the order, it cannot be for more than 1 hour, and the same authorized staff person can renew it for no more than 1 hour. Tell that to the group home people. Whenever an individual is in restraint, a staff person trained to understand an individual's emotional and physical reactions to restraint must be in attendance. You really think they do that? You really. How much did they pay you? I mean, it's obvious. You already said they paid you, but how much did they pay you to write this line of garbage? The individual must be situated so that the staff person is able to communicate with and see the individual at all times. In case of physical restraint, the staff person applying the restraint can also be the staff in attendance, as long as a separate staff person who is not applying the restraint observes the individual being restrained periodically every 15 minutes. Oh, yes, that will stop the horror. All people who are getting their pockets lined by the JRC. Gee, Judge, why didn't we ever think of this before? Where someone trained in the reactions of an individual in restraint is not available, an adult may be kept in restraint for no more than 2 hours as long as the mechanical restraint the staff observes the adult every 5 minutes. Mechanical restraints must be checked every 15 minutes for comfort, body alignment, and circulation by an authorized staff person or staff in attendance. Yes, because our circulation is the first thing they're concerned with. Any minor placed in restraint must be examined by an authorized physician or registered nurse practitioner, or certified physician's assistants within 15 minutes of initial order. Employed by the school, no doubt. However, a physician must examine the minor with 1 hour of initial order. The restraint order and status of the minor must be reviewed every hour. Any restraint on a minor exceeding 1 hour in a 24-hour period must be reviewed within 2 working days. And of course, they're going to do the paperwork, you stupid judge. They're going to tell you whatever the hell you want to hear. It's beholden on you, judge, to demand surveillance footage that these orders are being carried out. But you can't be bothered to do that, now can you? By the head of the JRC, who must forward a copy of his and her report on restraint to the Human Rights Committee and Department. I'll say it again, the fact that the JRC has a Human Rights Committee is the largest oxymoron I could possibly think of. Relief periods for individual in restraint must occur for at least 10 minutes of every 2 hours of restraint, except where there is an obvious and substantial risk of harm. An individual must be released from restraint if a person is authorized to issue an order for restraint determines that the restraint is no longer needed to prevent the continuation or renewal of an emergency condition. An individual must be released if he or she is asleep. Oh, but the electrodes won't be removed. Now will they? Where behavior necessitates the use of restraint recurs beyond the first 24-hour period, more than once within a week, or more than 2 times within a month, an intervention strategy must be promptly developed to respond to the behavior and reduce the likelihood of its reoccurrence. Oh, you mean like the GED, judge? That one? I just bet. I'd put money on it if I had some. Restraint forms must be completed whenever an individual is placed in restraint. Oh, as long as everyone does their proper homework. I see. We gotta make it look good for the feds, right? The form must be approved by DDS and must be filed with the department's Human Rights Office, the area office director, and JRC's HRC. So we've got some good ones in here, folks. They're talking about maintaining the human dignity of the kids in this school. Well, Judge, I have a perfect way to do that. Close down the school and get those kids the hell out of there before worse damage is already done to them. 6 people have died. You really think that this crap with minimum supervision is going to do anything? I promise you it won't. It really won't. But you observed what they wanted you to observe. You did what you were told and they lined your pockets. This is a bunch of garbage. It is lip service, it's paperwork to make the critics going away. Well, I'm sorry, JRC and Judge Berstein. It's just not going to work. And with that final thought, everyone, we're going to go ahead and close out for today. Now, we don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, please don't forget to hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon. And as always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye. Oh, what garbage.